Here's this agile thing with Mike Markey and Matt Beam and also Jeff Singleton.
So I
Like,
thought you were going to go
what's
down
your-
the road of like, so do you want to reorder the priorities for the next planning?
And you would, right? You would want to get to that mode. And as much, speaking of eating dog food, as much as we talk about having a backlog of change management items,
Yeah.
and we establish that model and we say we're going to do that. Do you do that?
Yes. Well, I
Okay.
regularly
Okay.
do that, and I didn't used to do that, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, but probably over the last 3 or 4 years, definitely.
It's the best solution pattern that we've got, right? I mean, if we didn't do that, what would we do instead? I mean, it's why we
Right.
ask teams to do it. Again, not to play that broken record, but like, if there was something better, we'd give you that. But this really
Yeah.
works.
No, I mean, I like doing it. I like having that list of things. For some reason, we never get to do that like in the same tools that they're using within the organization. It's like, well, yeah, I've got a spreadsheet where I've got all that stuff captured in.
Yeah.
It just, the problem is if you aren't in the tool space, you don't have the same visibility or transparency that everyone else has.
That's what it is, making the work visible, right?
Yes.
I've been to so many fucking meetings about this particular tool and focus on the specifics of, we literally used to do this on a fucking wall.
I know.
Like, it's like, anyway.
I like the sticky note wall was much easier to keep track of.
It just feels so ironic to me that like we've got like the technology has enabled all of these functions but it still feels like we've taken a step backwards in terms of, are the humans aligned? Are they having a focused conversation? Like it just, I don't know. It feels like something about
Well,
the
we
meat
have
space.
because something about some of these backlog management tools that start with the letter J,
Or A.
or whatever, whichever one it is, an R,
Yeah.
whatever letter you want. So it's
any tool that starts with a letter sucks in some aspects. But also, I
Right.
feel like we're blaming the tool because, but our the way we think about it, our mental model, our
it
approach is
constrains the thought process or the communication process in a not so helpful way, right?
100%.
We took a whiteboard of ideas. We created a design on a whiteboard and we drew boxes around stuff and we had a picture, we had a vision, we knew what this was going to be, and someone had to distill that into sticky notes that went on a wall, and if we were lucky, those sticky notes stayed on that drawing so that you could see where they sat, right, or had a touch point to those. But then we stuck them into a tool that turns them into a line item.
Being in that mode is
And
what
then
it
we
was.
randomized the list.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So what you just described there and the way that your body moved and like how you were animated in three-dimensional space with the spatial thing and your brain is in the spatial thing that we've evolved for millions of years. Like that's how we think and it's how we keep track of information. Being in that mode is what's missing when it's
the tool took it
2D
away.
plane.
And so what
the tool didn't take it away. Like we moved from that mode to this other mode. It didn't notice.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
All right, fair. So what I end up having to
bringing that
do,
mode
and
back.
what I'm doing with, like, I'm working with a team. They're stuck in Jira. They've put all their stories in there, and they've lost any sense of where they are.
To flatten conversation.
Right?
Yeah.
So they look at it, and I'm like, how did you come up with that list? And they said, well, we did a whiteboard drawing. I said, where is that? Oh, it's over here. Look in Mural or any of those tools, right? And you look at the drawing and you say, that is an excellent representation of what you're trying to achieve. Could you go in there and point to something and say, this item is here in your tool. This is here in Jira.
As you talk about it, you mean?
Just can you do it? And if they can, then you say, all right, the stuff that's done, could you mark it off as being done on your big drawing? Could you say, this is done, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this. And then you can say, what's next? You say, well, we should do this and this next. Like, okay, is that reflected in the tool? What we don't have right now, and maybe there's a synergy or somebody who's solved this problem. We just haven't paid for that option yet. But I don't see the whiteboard mirrored in the tool and changes here reflected there and changes there reflected here. I don't see
You mean the physical tool in 3D space?
Well, if we want, because unfortunately, for good or ill, we've gone global and we've gone more remote, and not everyone is there to gather around the physical whiteboard. So even if you have a physical whiteboard, you're going to digitize it and put it in an electronic form for other people to see. But at least you've got it as a reference point.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Right.
so various tools that start with letters have a Kanban view where they will show you like electronic card visualization.
Sure, you could look at cards, but
Yeah.
cards don't give context. Cards are like either you've taken a nebulous idea and you distilled it down, as you should,
Yeah.
into an index card.
Yeah.
That index card is represented as a line item or a box on the screen, but the nature of the work or the nature of the linear stack of work is that is not a mirror of the multi-column, multi-row origin, or even you can't see it in that form. You can't see it reproduced as a hierarchical drawing.
So one single tool, at least
Falls
there
down.
is not one right now
Right.
that I know of that does both. You want to see the overall context, and there are tools that provide that. Whiteboard
Yes.
tools that
Yes.
provide that,
Like Miro.
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah, there are a
Miro,
number
Mural,
of them, and
Lucid,
they're all
just
pretty
bigger.
darn good.
Yeah.
But what they don't do is they aren't married really tightly to some of these other backlog management tools that begin with a particular letter.
Yeah,
or
there are
another.
plugins that you can apply and you can link them.
And some
you
of them
could-
are kind of kludgy, frankly.
super
is like-
kludgy. Super kludgy.
So is your set for so could this be done in software? Your vision?
I don't know. Let me ask this.
Because
Any
it
of
will
you
be.
30 people who are listening to this, if you know of a tool, send us a note at questions@htat.show.
I'm sorry.
Link
Did you say
will be right
questions
here.
at htat.show?
HTAT.show.
Interesting.
Correct. Yes. All right. So to get back to this though, so we have to maintain two things. We have to have the drawing view, and we got to have the linear get through the work view, because those are the tools that are available to us right now.
I bet those
And-
integrations exist for J-shaped.
There probably does,
ALMs.
and then somebody goes and says, "Well, then that's what Confluence is for."
Yeah,
It's like
totally.
Confluence is a giant wiki. That is yet another suboptimal tool that takes what this was and captures it in some way, but it's still not perfect.
I mean, they're all leaky abstractions, right? I mean, you can't fit the whole context in there because then there's no room for
Yeah.
any.
But
analysis
context
or
is
anything.
key. You need context,
Yeah.
right? And so when
Just
when I'm working with these teams and I say, where's your big drawing? And there says over there. I said, have you been keeping it up to date? Said, of course not. It served its purpose. It was a drawing. Let's say
All I
its
wanted was a
purpose-
picture, a
Its purpose
snapshot.
wasn't to be a drawing. Its purpose was to be a representation of your thing.
Well, we didn't align on that, did we? Yes, it was not part of our working agreement.
And half the time we get there after they're past that. Like they've
totally.
already done their drawing, and now they want us to get through the work, and you have to come back and say, all right, show me the
your drawing.
picture. I want to see the picture, the big picture. Because right now all I can see is the linear list of things that you have in the tool.
Yeah.
Right? I have no idea if you're solving the problem, how you're going about solving the problem, if you're going through this in random numerical order because you had no better idea. Your product owner put stuff in this sequence and has never revisited that decision. But meanwhile, somebody went in there and accidentally clicked and dragged something into a different place on the board, and nobody can tell. And now, so why is that out of place? Anyway.
So by the time you ask that question, there are as many different pictures of the overall context as there are people looking at it.
Right.
And you
So-
don't know that. Or
Yeah.
you don't realize it. Yeah.
Which gets me back to as-built and definitions of done. Like if you're doing a user story and you've got user documentation or user guides or things like that, when you finish a user story, part of finishing that story should be updating those documents so that those documents are a running representation of the system as it is today, and not spending a much longer time. Like, somebody looks at, oh, we got to write a user guide. That's like a 21-point story, and it will take us 3 sprints to do. It's like,
You don't know that.
and it will be based on what? Because you haven't written the program yet. So this is based on a vision. It's based on an idea. It's based on a hope. And you're going to go through all the trouble of writing this giant document. And you don't think that that's a good use of your time, because why would you do that? What if I'm wrong? So you're going to wait as long as possible to write that document until you don't have any time left. So your documentation is going to suck. Okay. So point being, artifacts get updated to reflect the current state of the world when you're done. And that way you're evolving your status and your documentation as you go. Your original drawings get modified to keep pace with what you're doing. All that stuff has to happen in a well-run software initiative. And that way, if you got somebody else joining the team, you point them at all the artifacts and say, we are here.
Totally.
There's the big picture. We are here. Right? As opposed to this sprint, you have 5 stories that you need to get done. Commence implementation.
So it is some amount of time since we started.
Okay, so what you're saying is...
That's the end of this Agile thing.